It's a little after 6 o'clock. I think we're going to get started here this evening. We've got a lot to go over, and I know that there's going to be a lot of conversation this evening, and people want to get their views known, and that's what this meeting is all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's an information meeting to allow the landowners first. What I would like to have is the landowners to express their ideas and opinions about this project. Then after that, I would like the other surrounding landowners, not landowners, but interested people that live in the Browns Lake area to also give us their expressions about this project. I also want to assure you that we, as a board of trustees or board of supervisors, we have not made our mind up on any project whatsoever. This is an information gathering session. Your opinion is very, very important to us. We're not going to do anything that's going to be disruptive to this area down here because you folks live down here, and many of you for a number of generations. We respect that, and we're going to preserve that tradition. So this can be a good meeting to educate ourselves. We also have Mr. Dressler here, I think, this afternoon to talk about the various different plans so that you guys know what it all entails. And but as I said, we have not made our mind up on anything. But after this meeting, we would expect another formal type of a thing to go on because we do have to say yes or no as a board of trustees on this project whatsoever. So your input this evening is going to be very, very important to us. And we're going to take that with great value, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to first start out by introducing the Board of Trustees or the County Board of Supervisors. To my left is Mr. Munson, Mark Munson. I'm George Boykin, of course, Larry Clausen, and also Jackie Smith is here to hear this. So at this point, I think we'll go on and have Mr. Ivan Dressler start with his presentation, and then we'll get right into the agenda. I think you all have the agenda. So I want to thank you all for coming out on this beautiful evening. I'm sure there's some other things that you'd rather be doing, but this is very, very important too, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming out.
Okay, again, I'm Ivan Dressler. I'm a private consultant with the engineering firm of INS Group out of Storm Lake, Iowa. This is Brian Bloom with our firm. We both are professional engineers that work with drainage districts in up to 22 different counties in the state of Iowa. Our firm also works with agricultural drainage in southern Minnesota. Tonight, the board has hired us to evaluate the facility of the Orton Slough, and tonight what we will be doing is reviewing information that was presented back in January and that we are presenting again tonight about possible options for improvement to the facility of the Orton Slough. One of the things I do want to mention is that the board tonight is acting under as trustees for the district under the Iowa drainage law, or chapter 468 of the Iowa Code, which is the drainage code of the state of Iowa. The procedures that have to be followed are basically outlined under chapter 468 of the Iowa Code. Again, I mentioned this was the second informal meeting, with the first held on January 23rd. Since the first informal meeting, the board acted in the interest of all landowners in this overall watershed area, did hire us to also put together a grant application to help with the state of Iowa under a WORD grant, looking to get potential funding to basically enhance the area up here at the top end of the district facility, which is currently bid into a CRP Conservation Reserve Program with the NRCS. That application was submitted in February, and back in March, we were notified that the WERB application was not accepted. They had a multitude of applications that came in the door, and ours was basically turned down. Basically, the district application was turned down on the fact that we were only addressing about 2,700 acres of the overall total watershed for Browns Lake, which is around 6,700 acres. So Orton Slough makes up only less than 50% of the watershed that basically drains to the Browns Lake. They require in their application that the plan be a comprehensive plan, and they wanted to see basically the entire watershed being treated as part of that. So the board was trying to help address concerns that were raised at the last meeting about water quality issues, and we will talk about some of those enhancements later on in our presentation. A little bit of the background history of this district. We had 25 copies that basically has a map, a similar map like this. So I know you're getting far enough back that seeing this up here on the wall is somewhat difficult. So if you can at least refer to that as we go through the presentation. This district was originally established in 1912. And Brian, would you point out the existing tile system that's in place that was installed in 1912? That tile system is the only facility of the district that was established back there in the early 1900s. There is, again, right now, currently, around 2,300 acres in the overall watershed, assessment watershed, that help pay for that facility. Those, he's tracing right now the outer boundaries of that district that paid for the installation of that tile outlet. All the water in this watershed makes its way from the north down to that tile intake in the CRP ground. And Brian, if you can point to that area right there, in a sense, the whole overall watershed drains down to this location and then drained by a subsurface tile system down to Browns Lake. Okay? Part of the reason that we were asked to evaluate the capacity of this system and look at options if that system was adequate or inadequate was because there's been numerous times over the years where there was significant storm events and water ponded for many days down there at the outlet end. We were also talking with a landowner that spoke of before some clean out along Barker Avenue was completed around 2000 that there used to be a fair amount of impoundment in other locations farther up north in the watershed. The impounding of this water, naturally it stands for many days, gives you an indication that the capacity of the outlet isn't adequate to drain this water off in a timely fashion to prevent crop damage. Under new standards, the drainage standards for the state of Iowa to have good agricultural drainage, you're looking to remove up to 1/2 of an inch per acre per 24 hours to drain the water off the ground, trying to prevent crop damage. It is known that you will have in an agricultural setting, it's not like in the city where you're trying to take water at a much more rapid rate. You allow the water to temporarily pond, but you have to get it off in approximately 48 hours or you're going to have crop damage. It's going to ruin the root system and you're gonna lose crop. So the 1/2 inch per 24 hours is the standard that is being utilized in the state of Iowa for good agricultural drainage. In evaluating this tile system, we have found that this tile system has basically 0.05 of an inch per day drainage coefficient, or about 1/20th of what would be recommended for a good agricultural drainage standard now. Now, the water from the upper portion of the watershed has to find a route down to this outlet, and none of that work up above is facilities of the drainage district. Once the water made it to the lower end of the old original Orton Slough area, that is where the district basically went together and put in this tile outlet to remove that water from that portion of the watershed. Everybody in that purple boundary there is assessed. These lands were the lands that paid for the installation of that tile and are the ones that are paying for the upkeep of that facility. If there's a intake replacement or repair, or the tile basically has a blowout or a separated joint, that maintenance work is done and paid for by those landowners inside of that watershed. The general public does not pay for that. Only the lands that are served by that outlet basically pay for that. As we mentioned, we have the option sheet. Oh, back up one. Okay, so when our evaluation, we found that the capacity of this system is very inadequate for current drainage standards of today. So what we evaluated was different options. Back in, Mark, was it 2010, when there was a meeting with some of the landowners, 2011, a meeting with the landowners to discuss the fact that what would you do for a potential improvement to increase the capacity. Well, at that time, one of the options that was discussed, and the first option that we took a look at for cost purposes, was to parallel the existing tile system with an additional tile. The current tile system, being a 24-inch tile, basically would have to be supplemented with a 54-inch tile adjacent to it, okay? Those two tile working in combination would provide you the capacity of that 1/2 inch per acre per 24-hour drainage capacity to remove water from the watershed. You'll be utilizing the 24-inch still, and that 24-inch is 100 years old. So the second option that we looked at was, instead of paralleling the existing 24-inch, we'd be still talking about the replacement. Option 2 is to follow the existing 24-inch and install one new tile that would be able to handle that full capacity. A 24 and a 54 can be handled by a 60-inch tile. So instead of maintaining the 24, option 2 is following the old tile, replacing it, and basically replacing it with a 60-inch tile system. Now the issue that you get into is the fact that our cover over top of this tile, we are basically on a very flat grade. The existing tile system was originally designed to be on approximately a 600ths grade. It averages from top to bottom on a 300ths grade, okay? So it's a very, very flat grade. There isn't a lot of grade available in this system. So putting in a large 60-inch tile, by the time we get up to the top end of this system, our cover over top of that 60-inch is getting very shallow. Now the option 1 basically costs to put in the parallel 54-inch system and get the crossings under, new crossings under the interstate and then down under the county pavement and stuff. The work that would be paid for by the district is estimated at $607,000, and we don't have that in. Okay. You can point out there, there's $607,000 for option number 1, putting in the parallel 54-inch system. The additional work that would not be paid for by the district, which would be paid for by the DOT and the county secondary road department, would be an additional $156,000. If you move down to option 2, which is replacing the existing tile system with one new 60-inch tile system, you are looking at a cost of around $787,000 with an additional cost paid for by the DOT and secondary roads of $199,200. So you can see the project becomes quite pricey when you're trying to provide that capacity by a subsurface tile system. So as a third option, what we looked at was to take a look at an open ditch system. And let me back up here. On the open ditch system, what we were looking to do is to avoid any angle crossings across properties. So following the existing tile system with an open ditch would not be very feasible because of severance damages issues. So what we were looking to do is find a route that would parallel property lines and provide for potential additional storm capacity in the area where you have some commercial development already taking place. And that there is the potential of additional commercial developments on the property in the triangle piece over right down right in there, that there could be some additional commercial property, and you can see in development of that tile, the existing tile route would be in basically the way for the potential development in that area. So the open ditch option provides an alternate route that basically would provide the capacity necessary and avoid some of the future issues in commercial development in that area, and also provide better capacity than what you would get with a subsurface tile system. Because the open ditch, by its fact that you have to dig to a depth that's typically deeper than what the ditch has to have for carrying capacity, it has some storm capacity freeboard built into the open ditch. The open ditch basically would be able to handle larger storm events and still move the water, have capacity in the open ditch itself to handle bigger storms than what the tile system would have. So water would stand on the ground for a shorter period of time. Okay, the cost involved under the option 3 there for an open ditch basically involves about $432,000, of which right-of-way that would have to be acquired for the open ditch being in the neighborhood of up above there $93,000, $94,000. So the tile system, one of the nice things about tile is it's below ground and you do not have to buy right-of-way for that tile system. You can farm over top of it. But the open ditch system would be land completely taken out of production that basically the landowner has to be compensated for. And that compensation is built into basically our cost estimates for this project. The additional things, there would still be crossings under the pavement secondary road, and there would also be crossings under the interstate, Iowa DOT. So that cost, again, is around $200,000, which would be paid for by those entities, not by the district itself. Also, going back to our map, we also looked at a option 3A. The open ditch that we were shown where the top end of option 3 was, we would have been paralleling up along the west side of the CRP property and providing an open ditch system with a surface pipe outlet from the CRP ground into the open ditch. Well, option 3A, to enhance drainage further up into the watershed, would involve extending the open ditch along Interstate 29 there up to Barker Avenue. Because currently, water coming down along Barker Avenue has to traverse, you can follow that, kind of that flow path up there down to the intake. Brian? No? Yeah, right in there. That water is traversing across that property on surface, trying to find its way down to the outlet, down into the CRP ground. Okay, option 3A costs, which would basically include all the construction of 3 and adding the extension of 3A, would bring that project up to about $545,000. So even with the enhancements of the extension on the open ditch project as a project is still considerably cheaper yet than the closed conduit system, and you're providing better capacity with the open ditch system. Now, as we mentioned, some of the issues that were expressed in regard to the open ditch system was the fact that, is it going to deliver a lot more sediment to Browns Lake? The sediment issue coming off the ground, this is very flat topography. The soil loss, in discussions with the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, we had discussed with them what the average soil loss on this watershed is. That average soil loss is below the normal allowable soil loss on that property because it is very flat. Also, this open ditch system still utilizes, let's go back one more and show them approximately the portion of the watershed that comes down through that east side. That there's a good portion of this watershed, what was it, 1,200 acres? 1,100 acres that comes down and outlets into the CRP ground before it can enter the existing tile system. That still would occur with the open ditch system because we would basically allow the water from that area when in ponds basically to spill over into the open ditch. So we would still be using the grass area of the CRP for some of the filtering activity to handle water quality issues, to get sediment removed out of the facility. In addition, down the open ditch, what we would do is build basically riprap riffles with a deepened basin right behind the riffle down through the channel so that sediment, low-flowing waters, basically, the sediment basically would drop out behind these riffles, and then it could be cleaned out of the open ditch system to address water quality issues on the system before it outlets into Browns Lake. So those type of features are already built in, and the open ditch system basically we feel can actually handle most of the sediment issue and delivery going down to Browns Lake. The WORD grant, we'll go back to this one, was in an effort to purchase that ground and then to enhance the detention of that ground by building a dike system around it and putting in a dual stage infiltration outlet system where bigger flows would flow in over top on the intake and the low flows to drain down the 2.5 foot of water from the top of the intake down to the low elevation in the impoundment. We would basically utilize a subsurface tile, multiple, basically a pattern tile in that basin area to draw the water down through the ground and outlet that to the open ditch. So those type of improvements was what we were shooting for with the WORD grant to enhance this and bring the property under the control of the district long term. Now, that has failed, but we have evaluated using what the natural storage in that CRP would be and still removing the upper end of the tile out of the CRP ground. We would we would end it there and cap it. So anybody that's utilizing the existing tile for an outlet right now would still have it available, but we would put in a new outlet system from the CRP ground over to the open ditch. And we have done an evaluation of that, which would be roughly around doing the rock riffles down the open ditch and then installing the new outlet up into the CRP ground. That would be approximately around $90,000 to do that. So that is an additional work that we have taken a look at and basically would be an additional option of enhancing water quality, and that work basically being handled by the drainage district as part of the overall open ditch. The $90,000 with the original, go back to our cost estimate, with the open ditch, if you did both options 3A or 3 and 3A and added another $90,000, you're looking at around $635,000. So your cost for a fourth option, if you wish to call it that, is to basically do some additional enhancing with the open ditch to remove the maximum amount of sediment that we can remove from the property or the ground, with the CRP ground still remaining in private ownership. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to cover in regard to the potential options. I do want to touch on a few additional items that have to take place. One of them is if this improvement project moved forward, we would also be looking at, go back one more minute, the potential of annexation of additional lands at the upper end of the watershed. And also, Brian, if you can point out that area at the top. That area there, and then down at the lower end, there would be additional grounds down here that we find. And how do we find this? We use GIS, Geographical Information System software, and we use LIDAR data, which is elevation data for the whole watershed, and evaluate the flow paths from that property. Which way does water want to flow? And this is surface flow. This is how the water by elevation